You're listening to the Digital Deep Dive, where we tackle the newest trends, strategies, and pain points shaping growth across the digital landscape. From Amazon and D2C to international expansion, join our host and e-commerce leaders across multiple industries for in-depth discussions on how to maximize your brands in the digital arena. Now, here's your host, Aaron Conant.
Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Digital Deep Dive podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Conant, and today we're going to tackle the current state of fulfillment. I've had a lot of brands recently just reaching out for conversations and more insights on what's going on with Amazon, what's going on with local carriers, national carriers across the board. We know, you can win all of the all the PPC campaigns, you can drive all the traffic, you can make all the conversions, but if you're not getting the product there in a timely manner and you're missing customer expectations, it's just not good. And so I have a lot of brands with questions as things start to seem to get a little rocky. And it's kind of a continuation of Q3, Q4 of last year. It kind of sailed down a little bit and now it seems crazy again. But got a great friend, partner, supporter of the network, Corey Apirian over at Davinci Micro Fulfillment. It's just a real-time guru in this space. And so he agreed to give us, a good chunk of his time so we can just pick his brain on what's going on. But Corey, I'll kind of kick it over to you. You're awesome, my friend. And thanks for jumping on. I don't mind, if you want to jump in, just a brief intro on yourself and Davinci, that'd be awesome. And then we can I can start picking your brain on the fulfillment aspect.
I love it. No, these are my favorite conversations. Thanks for having me again, Aaron. Love the podcast. Love everything that you're doing at BWG and such great insight into the industry. So humbled to be here. Thank you. I am Corey Apirian, the CEO and founder of Davinci Micro Fulfillment. Davinci is a micro fulfillment solution that helps brands and retailers reach customers in a same day, one day, 2 day cadence using our physical location network and technology that we've deployed for very purposeful fulfillment and integrations. A lot of that is built around our order management tech, network optimization, AI, to help make sure inventory is placed closer to the customer, carrier optimization to make sure that we're able to expand and deliver on those same day, 1 to 2 day promises very precisely, and merchandising strategies so that we can enable that forward deployed inventory, help create more turns, and continue to understand what brands need to do to differentiate their marketplaces and have the right products merchandised so it can be delivered at the right place, right time.
Awesome. And I know you're helping a ton of brands out across the board in this fulfillment space. Can you just help us understand Amazon? What's going on? There's not a more frustrating. It used to be Walmart, right? If I think back 10 years ago, Walmart was so frustrating and everything and all the ask and everything was doing, but at least there seemed to be a purpose behind it. Even when they're asking, for crazy things, there seemed to be a purpose. And now it's just ongoing with Amazon. There's just random decisions being made with no explanation, nobody understanding the purpose. And there are a lot of people just pulling their hair out.
Well, the good news is a lot of the leaders from Walmart are now leaders at Amazon.
Okay.
So maybe that might be part of it. But no, the reality is that the industry is changing and there is a cost of managing your supply chain and there is a cost to serve your customer. As an example, Amazon's same day opportunities. If you don't reach a shopping cart size of a certain dollar amount, which I believe is $35 or $50, I forget the exact number, you're paying $2 to Amazon for that. It used to be free, included with Prime. Now there's a cost to it. If you want that same day service, Amazon just returned 35 million square feet of space of 300 to 500,000 square foot buildings and went and got these 75,000 square foot micro fulfillment centers. Which I love, right? That's a thesis, thumbs up to the model that we're building here. But the reality is that there's a lower cost to serve and a stronger operational performance and way more control and precision when you're operating micro fulfillment centers versus really large fulfillment centers and motherships that are within Amazon's network. And when you look at Amazon specifically outside of the OpEx, and their earnings call this week was really exciting. There was a lot of really positive momentum within their operations portfolio, their own growth on their own network, AWS, their marketing tools, 3P network, their 1P network, like everything is growing versus their last earnings call where, they were firing all these people and getting rid of all these facilities. It was a much different outlook than it was. What I would say, though, is that this move of regional fulfillment that Amazon's making right now is what's causing a lot of this churn on the back end. On the Seller Central side, Amazon's obviously adding all these fees on cubic inches and, higher turns and velocity and putting more on the brands and the suppliers to keep the right products turning within their ecosystem. On the Vendor Central side, they're pushing brands to be in direct fulfillment because they're reorganizing their fulfillment centers and their strategies. So they're not shipping product from Seattle to Miami. Now, Amazon's like the strongest with that, but they need these regional fulfillment centers and the inventory control and the network optimization to be able to do that. And their inventory got very out of control with the pandemic and the growth that they were experiencing. And they were trying to offset their own capacity by putting products throughout their network. So they're rebuilding that out right now from an infrastructure perspective. And I've talked about this on this podcast, others. It's a core thesis of Davinci, not to plug Davinci here, but having agility in your model is one of the most important things that you need to do as a brand in today's world. And it's not just to get closer to the customer. That's a huge part of it, but it's to be able to control your domestic intralogistics and the flow of inventory through the network so that you can ship bulk into an Amazon FC, fulfill products that aren't profitable or sustainable, or it's a hazmat item or a meltable item, or it's part of the transparency program or something that you can do to get more control over your inventory set to create a stronger customer experience, more profitability, and more control over your portfolio of assortment and what goods you're merchandising at those channels. And the same thing can be said for your retail.coms and your other online partners. When you look at Target.com, you have an assortment for inline products at the store. You have an assortment for .com. If products are getting shipped into Target.com and they're sold online, you don't really have to worry about a fulfillment strategy there, but you need to have items online that are helping merchandise the inline side of that assortment. And there's items that Target might want to take into their stores for obviously sales on that modular. There's inventory that they might want to take into their FCs for extended assortment. But any extended assortment items outside of that core for test and learn, seasonal items, hazmat again, big and bulky, whatever it may be that Target.com is looking to merchandise to help support their Target in-store business from a given brand, that brand is going to be selling, a specialized assortment directed for that. So you have three ways of selling that customer. So if you set up your success as a brand to be able to ship direct to consumer, direct to FC, direct to store, there's really nothing that you can't do at that point. And you get to interchange your assortment in a way that's very logical and very profitable and still maintains the service levels and customer experience that's needed. But at the same time, you're driving your business with control.
So your end of the day, I mean, Amazon going down this route, you're saying, hey, it's a good thing, micro fulfillment centers. It's a good thing for Amazon. It's a good thing for the customer. And with some pain, it's going to be a good thing for a brand. If they're forced in this model of all of a sudden they have to figure out a way to ship more inventory, right? If it is direct fulfillment, whatever it is, self-fulfilled prime, they're not handing out those badges anymore. I mean, they haven't for years now, but still meeting those customer guidelines. When they force a brand's hand, there's more opportunity on the back end, right? For the target, like you're talking about, right? It's still like Amazon's pushing this because when Amazon was carrying 14 weeks of cover, nobody really cared, right? They were advertising like crazy. They're driving as much sales. But when Amazon did this consolidation of, I can't remember how many million square feet you said, but
35. Yeah. About.
I mean, everybody squeezed. They're covering, 3 to 4 weeks of inventory max. People dial back the paid media dollars because they don't want to go out of stock. And now, they're being forced to, if they want to ramp it up, find another way to fulfill. But
if you're in direct fulfillment, let's just talk about Amazon for a second. I mean, sales hide sins, right? Like that's like an age-old adage. I mean, just because everyone was kind of getting fat off of like high sales doesn't mean there was all this waste on the P&L in the supply chain. So if anything, this is a great thing for brands to like realize and wake up that like, I mean, the pandemic and the quarantine came and the non-essential news, maybe that would have been, a good place to realize that direct fulfillment was critical, or this agile nature of being able to ship direct to consumer and direct to FC for just Amazon specifically here for a minute. The next Prime Day where, they over capacitated their entire network and brands couldn't get inventory in, or, shutting down to weeks of cover recently. And there's a lot of other milestones over the past 18 to 20 years that I could point at that, those same signals and flares have like gone up. But at the end of the day, brands need to be tighter on their inventory control. There is a balance to just in case and just in time inventory. Jamming 100% of your goods into Amazon's fulfillment center network or any retailer network is not a healthy thing. And there are technologies and tools out there for brands to manage their inventory, to manage their fulfillment operations, to manage their bulk flow of goods so that they can enable the merchandising arm of their business to do what they do best, which is build product and market product and keep that flywheel turning and rinse and repeat and use that data for new categories and continuous savings and building products in ships and own container and testing new bundles and all of these things that are needed. And like, if brands can understand how to do that simple thing of to let go, I think, and to be able to have this agile strategy with Amazon, I think their P&L would benefit in a really good way. And like, it's very important to be able to do that from a multi-location network. It doesn't mean that you can't do it with just one building. It's going to be more optimized when you do it with the right technology and the right multi-location network, so you're continuously getting to customers. And even in that direct fulfillment world, like I'm seeing Amazon now give special programs on forecasting, give different tools to certain sellers that are in our network specifically. I mean, we just are rolling out a very unique program with them, which I can't talk too much about, but it's using their transportation network to look to deliver. So like there's a lot of really cool things that are out there and tools that are out there if you get into this network, meaning Amazon's direct fulfillment model or even merchant filled if you're on the seller central side, and not putting 100% of your eggs into one basket. Like I think we've all seen that movie so many times at this point.
Yeah, and I think things are slowing down a little bit where people might have enough time to go tackle something like this. But for growth and building for the future, which is a lot of people are looking at right now, like this is the stuff that counts, right? I mean, there's the podcast that came out, just before this one last week's was on, generative AI and search. That's fantastic, right? And it's all marketing. But at the end of the day, being able to get your products to the end consumer and be able to offer product assortment on as many marketplaces and platforms as possible is going to enable growth that brands are looking for right now, because customer acquisition costs are going up. Paid search and social aren't performing like they used to. There's going to be a lot of changes that take place on that side. And again, product assortment and delivery is key. What does this do?
It's all connected too, just to go into that in a minute. Like it's all completely connected. What you sell, where you sell it, how you fulfill it, like all of those things are completely connected. And to create your flywheel to keep going, to get the most out of your AI, to get the most out of your marketing dollars, like you need to be able to understand your customer and you need to be able to deliver to them in a very precise way. And I think that's like the key here is that if you can figure out how to sell as a brand into Amazon and fulfill, and you use that 50% of the country's online revenue and inventory movement as an anchor to the rest of your business, you can create a really meaningful D2C marketplace and retail.com strategy in a very differentiated way using that similar infrastructure. And that's going to create more turns on your product, more information, more data. That's going to feed your AI. That's going to feed the flywheel. It's going to feed the engine of the supply chain as well. And everybody wins at that point.
So let me ask you a question around, evaluation, because I mean, for a topic, if I'm talking to 20 to 30 brands a week, for it to start coming up in 3 or 4 conversations a week, that means it's a major pain point. right? And these things, there's ebbs and flows to the whole thing. But there is a big push right now because of, I think, some spend is slowing down by consumers, and people are trying to maintain and hit numbers for this year, that, they're looking at this model, especially because they've had assortment cut out of Amazon or whatever it might be, or they can't get it on Walmart or in store or in Target. So they jump out. In the past, you just go talk to, any of the traditional 3PLs, and, maybe they can do it. Maybe they can't. Maybe they want to do it. Maybe they don't, right? They don't want to do the individual pick, pack, ship or kitting or bundling because they like to do full pallets and full truckloads. But, what should people be looking for as they're going out, evaluating 3PLs that are out there that can help with this? Like, what are the top, 3 or 4 questions? Do you have recommendations? Like, if you walk in the door and you ask XYZ and they say, J, then you need to turn around and leave.
It's a really good question. I think being agnostic to channels is something that's really important. I think integration technology is really important. I think carrier optimization is something that's really important. I think physical location networks are really important. But the biggest thing today is the execution and the KPI. Let me see your service levels, and let me see how you work with other brands, and let me talk to those other brands, and let me hear. We're a supply chain. It's logistics. I say this all the time, like Shopify and Amazon, those stores don't close. There's no out to lunch sign that goes on the door. We'll be back in 30. You're always taking orders, and it is not an easy problem that we're solving. And, Davinci is certainly not perfect. Other 3PLs have talked about this very often in very public areas. Nobody's perfect in this arena, but you have to measure yourself and you have to have continuous improvement. And you need to be able to track certain KPIs on inventory control. If it's FDA and quality driven programs, you need to be able to be at 100% traceability. There's some core components within there that you have to be flawless with. And order accuracy, on-time orders, inventory accuracy, on-time receipts, communication, customer operations. Those are the most important things that you can have, because at the end of the day, things are going to go wrong, and there's a spigot that's always on. So there's no time to pause and to stop, but you have to always be communicating, and you have to have full transparency. For 3PLs or other logistics companies that don't show the good and the bad, that to me would be a red flag. We show everything to our customers, whether it's good or it's bad or indifferent. They have access to everything. And I think that's something that I've built with Davinci since day one. It's something that transparency is critical and communication is critical.
Yeah. No, awesome. So transparency around the KPIs, talking to other clients.
Real-time inventory, access to lot information, expiration dates, inventory management, order flow, orders that ship, tracking numbers, all of those things. Some of it sounds fairly standard. It's not all standard out there, and there's certain levels to it. I think that the carrier conversation is a really important one. Sustainability is a really important one. I think when I talk to brands, I would say that sustainability comes up in conversations now. It used to not as much. KPIs is probably the biggest one. And after that, I think freight expense. And I think freight expense is a really unique thing, because traditionally a lot of the 3PLs out there, and I think this is a common thing, they sell back freight and postage to a lot of the brands because they create this density with their volume, and they'll go to a UPS or a FedEx or a post office, less post office because that's just a sheet rate. But with the UPS and FedEx, you can create volume discounts and things like that, and different types of contract agreements and rebates and all these other things that these parcel carriers have done on a one-to-one basis based on giving X number of volume and minimums and things like that in a network. But there are certain business rules and channels where that just really doesn't work, specifically on the dropship side. If you want to talk about Amazon and direct fulfillment, that's something that you really need to be able to take a direction from an API on how you're shipping, where you're shipping, and when you're shipping. Target and Walmart.com, they have new rules now about shipping early. Like you can't ship early with these partners because they've created rates with their carriers that are based on volume. And if you are shipping too much volume with a carrier, then they get penalized for that. And they're going to send that penalty down back to the brand or the suppliers. So you have to be really precise with those retailers on how you ship. And you also need to be able to, in my opinion, have a diversified carrier base today and not put all of your eggs into that basket of just UPS or FedEx, because then you're influencing an order and you're influencing a customer in a negative way that's not conducive to either a service level, a cost, a customer experience, or a sustainable approach to fulfillment when you are shipping at a zip code level on different subcategories in a real-time format.
So, like, what do we do with like local carriers? Like, how do you look at, across the board? How should people be thinking about that engagement?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a tremendous amount of local carriers out there today. There's a handful that have a lot of quality and they're really strong and they're very regional in most cases. Some of them have national presences, but at a zip code level, they're still somewhat regional within that national presence, meaning they might have sortation centers or hubs or drivers across the network. There's very few that have full national. I think when you look at more of the gig workers, like the Uber, the DoorDash, the Shipt, like they're more national because it's more of a gig network. When you look at some of the other local carriers that have their own infrastructure and trucks, those are more costly to build that up, of course, but quality and execution are probably the two things that are at forefront for most of those carriers. And I have embraced that in a big way. One of the things that Davinci's been working on for a really long time is this deployment of local carriers across a same day, next day network across the entire US. And we've just developed that and we've launched it now. I don't want to make this again a pitch about Davinci, but I think that's a really unique thing that a lot of merchants are trying to see is like with Shopify, obviously the news with Flexport acquiring Shopify yesterday, this is an interesting and timely conversation to have. The Shopify fulfillment network specifically catering to really small brands. I know they tried to launch a little bit more of a catering on their commercial side to really large brands, and some have been able to take that on. However, I think Shopify has catered to some smaller companies and D2C native companies for a long time. I think bigger brands are starting to dip their toe into that because it's an important place for brands to play. And I think Shopify has an amazing platform. And obviously, they're one of the leaders out there with BigCommerce. I mean, that's not news to anybody. But having an order management technology and optimizing checkout is one of the most important things that you can do in your D2C business, especially when you're integrating with a BigCommerce and Shopify, because checkout, a lot of really unique things happen there. And Amazon's proven that out, obviously, for years, right? That's where a lot of their magic has happened in giving that execution and conversion rate. So if you can take that same experience and move that into your D2C platform, you can do a lot of really great things, but you need to be able to understand how to feed inventory at a real-time basis based on the zip codes that you're servicing and how to deploy those orders in a very unique way so you can have multi-location fulfillment and not just roll up one sum of inventory from a connected network, because what you're going to find is you're going to have a lot of out of stocks. You're going to have a lot of split shipments. It's going to be a customer operation and freight out nightmare. And that's something that we've cracked the code on, and how we've deployed that is through this local carrier network plus checkout optimization technology with our order management system, so we can be really precise. And the net benefit to all of this is the sustainability effect. The fulfillment cost is dramatically less from an outbound parcel perspective, especially when you're talking about, items that historically have a higher dim weight, where the parcel carriers really charge on dim weight in a big way. So if you have a box of soda, a carton of soda, like that's going to be a low value, high weight item. You might be selling that soda for more, or for less than what the freight actually is on that product type. So, these are really important things you need to do. And then the safety of that delivery. I think 25% of all returns, which globally is over $1 trillion of return revenue, 25% of that is due to damages by the carrier. So if you can go from a point-to-point delivery system that's a huge benefit. I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits of the Amazon regional fulfillment model is that rifle approach delivery network that's creating density on their routes and creating an opportunity to have less handling, less waste, and more volume coming through those same routes. And I think that's a really unique thing.
Yeah, I do want to bring up, a little bit. You just go back to what you brought up with Shopify selling off 6 River and Deliver, to Flexport.
And Ocado.
What's that?
Ocado bought 6 River.
Oh.
That's the robotics company that Kroger's partnered with. They're based.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. So Flexport is buying Shopify logistics?
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting. Any thoughts on that? Because
I have a lot of thoughts on it. I think it's amazing. I think kudos to the leadership team at Shopify to understand that they could not make that work.
Why not?
Well, it's not their focus. That's not what they do. They are not operators. They're not fulfillment logistics operators. It is a really hard problem. And Deliver, no disrespect to Deliver, I mean, they built a great business and great technology, but that's a 4PL network that doesn't operate their own buildings. They may understand it. They may understand the flow of goods. But, when you're talking about inventory control and getting closer to the customer, or just managing inventory and KPIs, as an example, to manage this vast network of unowned warehouses across multiple different warehouse management systems and labor and several hundred bodies inside one building in like a 500,000 square foot building. Like, it's so easy to lose inventory in that network. And I'm not knocking Deliver. I think really highly of what they've built. I didn't sell my company to Shopify. They did. Like, it's an amazing thing. I really think it's awesome what they've developed. And they were definitely onto something really early. What I will say, though, is that I think Dave Clark probably knows how to operate a fulfillment business coming from Amazon. However, Flexport's DNA is a non-asset-based business, and it's very technology-driven. So they're going to have a similar challenge there. I think that the opportunity with Flexport is that Shopify really they may have touted multi-channel fulfillment, just like Amazon touts multi-channel fulfillment, but that's not a real thing, right? Like, Amazon's not really going to be shipping a lot of volume for Walmart and Target, even though they say that they want to, right, out of their logistics department. I have a hard time believing that large brands are going to give Amazon their fulfillment business for Walmart and Target.com or Macy's or Kohl's or whatever it may be. I think Flexport has the opportunity to get that because it's somewhat more agnostic and a pipeline into Shopify. It sounds like that they're going after the small and medium clients also, which I think does, quote unquote, democratize that from manufacturing to porch, which is kind of the pitch that I think Dave Clark wrote about in his press release and in his notice to his team and shareholders. And I get that. Again, I think it's going to take time for them to build out that network, and it's going to be interesting to see how that transitions. And that service will be appropriate for some. It won't be appropriate for all. I think the logistics environment is so vast and specialized that I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all game in totality. But I do think that they have something interesting going there. It'll be interesting to see how it rolls out. I think from the 6 River perspective, I think Ocado acquiring that was interesting. They have a Cube ASRS automated storage and retrieval system that Ocado has sold to Kroger, which has been a really big win for them in the United States. Kroger is probably one of the leaders on the automation space in the grocery arena. And I think this gives another arsenal for their AMR, for their mobile robot technology, to add to their arsenal for a Kroger or others where an ASRS might solve one problem, but not another. I think this is a really good thing for both of those companies. It's going to be really interesting to see how it plays out. I think the merchants that are within that network, from going from Deliver to Shopify and now to Flexport, that's probably a hard transition.
Yeah, I mean, especially happened in under a year.
Correct.
Right? The Deliver thing just happened.
Just happened. Yeah. But I think again, a lot of people in the industry saw that coming, to be honest with you. I don't know if they saw Flexport coming. I mean, Flexport's management team has been investors in Deliverr for a really long time. There's been strategic partnerships rolled out for a very long time. Most acquisitions happen with companies that know each other. Like, I would say this is something that's been talked about for a while. And honestly, I think most people in the industry who, are close and attuned to what's going on probably saw the Deliverr and Shopify acquisition as something that would be really hard to roll out because it's a really heavy lift. It's a totally different type of business.
And it could be an immediate win. Maybe, it's kind of like a shot in the dark almost, like, hey, this could be amazing, or we're going to have to sell it off. I mean, they made a really quick decision.
Really quick.
Maybe they thought there's going to see this huge influx of brands immediately using it and they could monetize a different level, right? I mean, they love taking a chunk of the pay on the payment side, right? They've got the platform fees. Maybe it's just another cash grab, to kind of almost set up a mini Amazon in a way. I mean, you think about it, you've got all those brands on your platform using your payment stack, and you're doing the delivery. You're essentially a marketplace at that point in time. Like,
correct.
Yeah. Super interesting.
Yeah, it is really interesting. I mean, certainly macroeconomic conditions feed into that a little bit, and consumer spending and the merchants themselves. But again, this goes back to the brands that are really meaningful, that are driving the significant portions of revenue that are out there in the e-commerce ecosystem right now. I mean, a lot of them that were so D2C heavy are obviously diversifying. A lot of them are not doing amazing in top line sales and bottom line. You mentioned it earlier, consumer acquisition cost is so high. Peloton ultimately went into Amazon. They needed to get more customers and have another channel of distribution. I think that's the reality of what we've been talking about all morning here, is that you need to diversify yourself on different channels and marketplaces to continue to grow in a healthy way. And the only way you can really do that is by having a FC, in-store, and fulfillment strategy in today's world. And it's a really important thing that you need to start now if you haven't started it already. And there's really great tools and technologies for people to be able to do that.
Yeah, I also think on the Shopify side, a lot of those are smaller merchants. I mean, when you grow in size and you have a B2B arm, there's a lot of people that have jumped over to a big commerce, who have a shopware coming in. If you're massive, you're going with a commerce tools, fully composable architecture. It's just, it's hard with the size of the sellers, I think, to make Deliverr work, as you're trying to integrate it in and grow the platform. When you have medium, larger size, companies that have direct to consumer, they're not hanging out on Shopify a ton, right? Yep. Shopify is a great platform, but you really have to have somebody that knows what they're doing on the platform to do a bunch of the customizations that are required when you are a larger company. And so, I think you kind of said it perfectly, which is they made the right decision in spinning it off, and they did it quickly, right?
Yeah.
Realize they made the wrong thing. Don't hang on to this for 3 years to try to make it work. You see it's not working, spin it off.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Fail fast, right? That's Amazon's mantra.
Yeah. What's top of mind for you? I've been picking your brain for a while now. What's top of mind for you in the digital space? Feel free to shoot questions my way.
I love that. I get to interview you now. I would say, what's going on in the digital marketing space? Are keywords dying? Where's that ad spend going? Where are those dollars going from brands? I'm curious.
Where are they going, or where will they go?
Both.
Where they're going is, they're being pulled away from Amazon. If I talk to one person about retail media networks a week, I talk to 20, because retail media is taking off. People just don't care for anything but the Amazon platform. That's just the reality. I mean, there's here and there it works, but even on the Walmart side, talking to brands, on-site is not performing, but off-site is. So they want to pour money into off-site, but Walmart's like, no, you have to do equal amount on both. And they're like, I'm not spending money on something that doesn't perform. I have to hit my KPIs. More money is just going, back to traditional paid search and social. Again, The search side is completely changing and being adapted by AI that's out there right now. And the last podcast and a webinar I did with Udayan over at NetElixir around how search is changing is crazy. Where you think about how we've done it forever, which is you type a question into Google, you get 400 answers, and then you type a different one in. And with Chat GPT, GPT-4, whatever we want to call it, you have a conversation with it, right? Like you literally say, hey, I'd like to, have give me a, 25th wedding anniversary suggestions. Okay, I'd like to look into the Hawaii one. Okay, how long, how much you're having a conversation back and forth. In those instances, Google's been really good about sticking in ads into the top 10 search responses, sticking in ads where you might click on. Well, what if there's one response? What if there's not 10? It's harder to stick an ad in there. So that's going to be interesting. Another really big one is connected TV.
Live streaming.
Yeah. And that is super interesting because in the past, if you're using like a trade desk in your agency and a double verify, you don't know who you're reaching, right? And you're just believing that it's reaching that audience and you're trying to gauge. Well, there's some new platforms out there, like a Mountain, and there's some agencies that deal with it. I was just talking to a Neon Pixel yesterday that builds on top of the Mountain platform where you get very, very targeted. I want these zip code areas. I want these customer demographics. I want them streaming on these devices and these shows. Like it gets very, very specific. And then they can also then ping the network and identify other devices on that network and then track conversion. I mean, it's really creepy from a brand or from a personal standpoint, but from a brand standpoint, you can start getting very targeted and seeing results and getting attribution. The spend on those platforms is a little bit higher. But if you think about you're actually getting the audience you want, and then if a conversion, you can immediately take it out, right? You're not getting the old school days where the ad roll, the Criteo, the ads follow you, for the next 5 weeks, even after you already bought the product.
Right.
So I think a lot of money is going there. Amazon DSP, a lot of money is going there. People aren't investing there. It's silly at this point in time. There's so much available inventory that is not going to go away for 2 to 3 years. I mean, the biggest recommendation that I have for like brands right now is on that AI. Well, try all these out. My biggest recommendation is get an R&D budget for your digital advertising media ecom group and set that aside and let them play around. Give your team members the task of playing around. What's that?
Is it and back it up with strategic micro fulfillment so you can do those zip codes very precisely?
Yes. It is. AI side is just have your team members spend 15 to 30 minutes a week playing around with it. And yeah, I mean, the other side is figure out a way. And this kind of goes back to this conversation why I wanted to have it is figure out a way to expand your reach and the deliverability of your products beyond where you're currently at, because marketplaces out there outside of Amazon are growing. I just had a great conversation with the Target Plus team. They're looking to grow. Specific categories, they're much more restrictive. But Walmart, for sure. But there's a lot of marketplaces that are popping up. Miracle's building these things out all over the place. There's retailers. You need to have a plan to get on as many as possible and get in front of as many eyeballs as possible and have the connectivity to be there and then fulfill in 1 to 2 days. And you will see growth without a doubt because so many people aren't doing it. And that's, I don't know. Part of the reason for this podcast is
right?
What's that?
You got to fish where the fish are.
Right. And that's part of like I like doing this podcast because it has a big reach, but it's able to get those ideas. Like these are things you have to do.
Yeah.
You have to do. And we try to get really, really targeted with the topics we have that are really meaningful at any point in time through the conversations we're having. But that is one of them. You need to expand your reach. And, I'm talking to a ton of brands. You brought up with Peloton that are jumping into Amazon.
Yeah.
The eyeballs are there. You don't have to put your full assortment, but you need to be there. That's where the eyeballs are starting. If for no other reason than to tap into the Amazon DSP and targeted demographics.
Yeah, just research, conversion, reviews. Put it at the highest price possible. Amazon won't allow that, right? But you know what I mean? Like, you need to have it's Amazon and not Amazon verse.
Right. And that's been really interesting to see kind of that change. And I think that'll happen with Walmart as well. Walmart just needs to figure out its ad strategy for brands.
Yeah.
Like just be a partner and you're going to explode. If you can be a better partner than Amazon, which doesn't take much, like brands are going to love you and throw money at you, Walmart. That's just the reality. And it's just interesting because as restrictive as Target has been, like they've done a great job of, pouring into brands and helping them grow. But again, they're not the everything store. They're the stuff we want store.
Yep.
So, so that's kind of the quick rundown. What are you most excited about?
For the industry or for Davinci?
Both. Why not?
Yeah. For Davinci, I will say this unlock of next day local carriers is one of the most exciting things that I think we're launching in a while. And it's really a good thing for brands and customers. And I think like we're just getting started on that industry wide. And I think, Davinci's a little bit ahead of the game there. And I'm excited about that because it just is going to have such a strong benefit for increased conversion and profitability and lower cost of fulfillment. Industry wide, I would just say that I think brands are waking up to what we've been talking about. And I think there's a lot of smart people out there with a lot of really smart technologies. Obviously, this is the year of AI and everything's AI. How much that's true or not true, I think people are really understanding that. And I think that from a connected ecosystem perspective, and I talk a lot about the neural network and this interoperated, domestic intralogistic environment where everything is kind of connected upon itself. I think you can take that and put that into all these different subcategories within the supply chain, retail media networks, in-store versus on shelf, versus online. I think we're just getting started here. And it's just such an exciting time to be in the industry because there's just so much wealth of knowledge and so much opportunity. I think regardless of the financial markets over the past 6 to 12 months, regardless of the pandemic before it, which obviously rocked the industry and the world in a way that I don't think we've seen in decades, right? Centuries, like on some level. But I think there's a lot of opportunity and it's just an exciting time to be in the industry. That's all.
No, it is. Especially if you like to learn.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
And it's always changing. It's always moving and staying on top. It's hard, but it's also fun. It's like that game, right? That you just keep going and you keep and you have to win the day because tomorrow's a new game and you're playing a different game day after day. But awesome. Corey, as always, thanks for the great conversation. Really value you and the value that you bring to the network and the brands that are in it, but also just being a great friend and partner and supporter of the stuff that we're doing here on the Connect side.
The feeling's mutual, Aaron. Every time we talk, I get smarter, and your team's phenomenal to work with. It's just such an amazing network.
Thanks, my friend. Same mutual feelings here. And with that, everybody, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Digital Deep Dive. Thanks again, Corey, for your time today. Everybody take care, stay safe. Have a great day.
Thanks, Aaron.